Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Irembo TechTalk. My name is Pizera Micheline. I'm a software test engineer at Irembo. Today's speaker is going to focus on effective load testing for scalable microservices, and she'll be exploring about the tools we use, discuss the real-world challenges, and the best practices to optimize performance and reliability. Hello, Stacy.
Hi, Nishu.
Can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, so my name is Stacy Murenzi. I'm also a quality assurance engineer here at Irembo. I'm glad to be joined by Nishu to discuss about the performance testing, load testing for scalable microservice.
Before we start, can you talk about your background?
All right.
So people can know a little bit about yourself.
All right. So my background in tech, if I would say that. So I have a bachelor degree in software engineering. So I went to the Adventist University of Central Africa. And later, after graduating, I joined Irembo as an intern, and then which later on became an opportunity, and started off as a quality assurance engineer.
How did you get interested in quality assurance or software testing?
Well, I would say I would consider myself as someone who's very detailed, oriented. So which has attracted me to the quality assurance part of things, and software testing as well, because I graduated in software engineering. I wanted to dive deep into the software testing context. And that's how I landed the job opportunity in quality assurance.
What do you think are essential skills to be a software test engineer?
I would say essential skill someone could have, first of all, is being detail-oriented, and also have a little bit background in the software engineering aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are the two main kind.
So can you explain a bit about microservices?
Yes. So I'll try to make it as simple as it can be. So microservices is actually a framework which is used by developers, let's say, when they are building an application. So if you could think of microservices as a puzzle. I don't know if you've heard about a puzzle, the way you have different blocks and try to build them up to come up with something. Mm-hmm. So the small dots that you use to build the whole puzzle, those are the services. Mm. And when they are all together, they make a system. Mm. So I would say the services work independently, and then make a large system by working together hand in hand.
Mm. Yeah. So I know that some people may have microservices, especially for companies that develop systems, but other companies do not have that. So what's the advantages of having microservices?
So I would say building an application following the microservices framework is good, because like I said, with introducing what a microservices framework is where you have let's say services working independently rather than having them work all at once, which I think is an advantage. So let's say when you want to update one service on its own, you won't have to work with the others. You have to work on it independently, and then later on do deployments on that specific service without affecting the other ones. And also, how I would say is an advantage other than the monolithic framework is when on the monolithic framework, I would say when you make a change, it's going to impact the whole platform, the whole system. And when you say, let's say when you make a release, that means you have to deploy everything, the whole application on its own. While when you're doing using the microservices way of things, you work on one service, have it change on its own, and then later on deploy it on its own as well, without having to affect the whole application.
Okay. So now let's move to the performance testing. Tell us, what is performance testing? Is that the only testing you do as a QA? What else do you do just to make the platform, as in the Irembo platform, works?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say performance testing is the only thing that you do. So like QA has a lot of testing in it. Quality assurance is just to assure the quality of a product that you're giving out to users to use, where we have performance testing as one aspect of the quality assurance. So basically, performance testing is like, how can your system handle a lot of users, a lot of transactions, a lot of requests, without having any issues or anything that might lead the system to slow down or to, like, might not give the best experience to a user. That's how I can say, in terms of performance. So yeah, but, the performance testing is just testing the performance of the system.
Okay. In what time in software testing lifecycle do you start the performance testing? Is it the beginning of the development? Is it at the end? Is it in the middle? When is it the proper time to do the performance testing?
Okay, I would say, with my experience, I would say doing the performance testing towards the end of the development is the best time, like, to do the test. Yeah. So probably most towards the end of the development phase. Yeah.
So maybe people who are not familiar with performance testing would ask themselves, like, how do you do the performance testing? Is it on the platform? Is it on the services? Is it where exactly?
Well, the performance testing can be done in so many different ways. So it has, of course, to be on the platform, but the platform also, I would say, has different, I'd say, endpoints that it uses. So yeah, one of the best practices would be to first understand how your project works or your system works. What's the framework it uses? How best can you accommodate the framework to have it better tested in terms of performance, and also applying different techniques depending on how your system works. So I'd say one of the techniques I've used is first having the better strategy in terms of testing, planning very well the different activities that will be done. Yeah.
So now that you talked about how you do when we do the performance testings and how we do it, what are the best practices?
So one of the best practices would be applying different performance testing techniques into your system, and also understanding how well the system works. So first would be the first technique that I like to apply is the load testing. This is like load testing is like simulating user traffic on your platform, like, which is going to show real world examples, like how your system is going to be performing under a high load of users. So that is one. The second is also a spike testing. So this is when, let's say, you have a certain feature on your platform that you know at a certain point it's going to accumulate a lot of users. So like also testing that, like how is your system going to handle that amount of a lot of users on that specific feature. Let's say for example, Black Friday, which is soon coming. That's an example I can give.
Okay.
If we're on Black Friday, how is your system going to behave when there's a heavy load of users on the platform? Yeah, we also have, since we're still talking about the microservices framework, how to perform it better, there's the API performance testing, where you need to test APIs, each API on its own, and how it's going to handle traffic on its own, basically. Yeah, and the last one would be the end-to-end testing. So here is, let's say different services are now interconnecting, like they're communicating between each other. How is it also like simulating that that communication under also a lot of users, under high load users? How is it going to perform? So those are the best practices, and also in addition, you need to also prepare best on how you're going to carry out all those activities, like plan accordingly depending on how your system works, how big the system is also, so that you don't find yourself falling into mistakes, if that's how I can say it, that would prevent you from testing the whole system.
So basically, you start your performance testing with the planning.
Yes.
So you start by planning and you include all those.
Yes, different techniques.
Yes. Okay. You kept on saying simulation. How do you simulate? Do you simulate users who are going to use a certain microservice or APIs? How do you simulate that?
So while performing the performance test, there's a lot of ways you can simulate users. So first of all which is the ghetto, that's how I can call it. Let's say you bring in a lot of laptops, you have a lot of users, let's say you go to the market, and then you give everyone a laptop or a phone so that they access your system. But I wouldn't advise that. And also, there's a way you can use different tools that are there for people to use, which can simulate a lot of users. Which one tool that I've been using is called JMeter. So this is a tool that is available on the internet. It's open source. It's free. You can use, and it's very reliable and very efficient. So that's a few ways on how you can simulate users.
Okay, you talked about the tools. How did you come up with JMeter?
Okay.
Is it by recommendation or?
Okay. So how I came up with a tool is because it's the most commonly used tool. But again, it would still coming to understanding how your system works. So it depends on how the system works and how it's built, basically. That using JMeter will benefit you, actually. So I would say maybe before you choose a tool, first understand how your system works, or if it should be the best tool to use, because we have a lot of tools that you can use, which are also open source there to the internet, where if you seek support, you can find support very quickly. So one of the reason why I chose JMeter is because of the nature of the system. And how well I know it and how I can get best, I would say quick support.
So in a summary, if someone is looking for a tool, what are the basic criteria they should look for?
So I would say the pricing of the tool, it has to be, it depends. If you want a paid tool, it's okay. But if, again, you want something that is free, that can also assist you in a very big way, I said the pricing aspect, and also understanding your system. And so how can you also, in terms of collaboration, so let's say if you have a big team that you're working with, how can you quickly collaborate on that specific tool and work under the same workspace using that tool? How easy can it be for you guys to use it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Accessibility, pricing, how easy is the tool, how efficient it is, yeah, all those.
okay.
Yeah.
So now let's come back to the performance, to the actual performance in microservices. From your experience, what are the main causes you've seen of performance issues in microservices?
Okay. I would say from my experience, the common issues. The first one would be the network latency. So let's say with these microservices framework, where we say that services intercommunicate between each other independently. So I would say there might be a degradation of performance in the application because of that, where one service has to communicate with the other one just to give response for the user. Where sometimes I would say you don't have control over the network. So that could be one of the issues. Another one is the code quality. So sometimes you can have a poor code quality that could lead to different inefficiencies, different performance inefficiencies on your system. So yeah, where like you find yourself having a large code base, which have an impact on the performance of the system. Where sometimes you find in the code base you might have functions that are really unnecessary, that are taking so much time, which can lead to the performance of the application to degrade in a way. So yeah, those are the two main issues that I've encountered.
Okay. How did you? Okay, maybe before it goes to the next, we go to the next question. In my own experience, I've seen environment mismatch.
Yes.
Can you talk about that?
That's an issue. Really. So yeah, sometimes I would say most of the testing environments are a bit unstable, which can be really a challenge. It can really be a challenge for you to perform the testing at ease. That's how I can say. So yeah, I've struggled with. Let's say I have to run loads on a specific endpoint, and then today the environment is working. I have specific results, and then tomorrow it has downgraded, and yet the developer is saying they've optimized the endpoint. So really, the testing environments are a bit tricky. But if you find a way to properly, I'd say, set up your configuration on JMeta, you can get along with that, get along with the environments.
So, still talking about the environment, what is the best environment to run the performance testing on?
Well, so I would say the best environment to run the performance testing is strictly not production, the live environment. But let's say an environment which is clean, like there's no, how can I say, development and testing going on at the same time. So you just have the system working very well without a lot of changes happening in the background which are being pushed. So if you have an environment strictly for testing, and then later they can do the optimization later, but when they've given you much time like to test on the environment.
Could you talk about the real world example? I mean, real world challenge you've met while doing the performance testing.
Okay, so the challenges, first of all, I would start with the unstable testing environment, as you've mentioned. That's the very big challenge. But yeah, like I mentioned, you need to understand the tool that you're using and also find a way to make it work for those environments. And also let it just be for testing, if I could say that, yeah. The other one is sometimes when you're using JMeta, you need to be more smart when coming up with the
It's like using
configuration.
AI.
Yes, you have to be smart when it comes to that tool because it can do wonders, if that's how I can say. So you need to come up with a better strategy on how to simulate those users. So the challenge that I faced was studying with a lot of users, which was giving me inadequate results, which was giving me bad results. And then you keep reporting let's say that your tests are looking good, but on the development side, everything looks good. Every optimization was done at its best. So you need to have a better strategy to configure the tool that you're using. The other one would be also finding the right tool to use can also be an issue. Depending on the system you're using. I might be using, let's say, BlazeMeter, and someone else is using JMeta. We're testing the same system, but I get better results and then you don't get better results. Or it's being inefficient on my end and being efficient on your end. So also finding the best testing tool that can accommodate the architecture being used on the development side or the system. So those are the challenges I'd say.
So basically, you would recommend a team to use one tool.
Yes, one common tool.
One common tool. You talked about something results. What are the criteria for your results? What are you looking for to say that this test has passed?
Okay, so as I've mentioned before, so before you even start the performance testing activity, you need to have a beta plan. So when I say a beta plan, it's, let's say you have a base on which you need the base metrics, let's say. So if you're upgrading from one system to another system, so the previous system had its threshold and base metrics that were there. Maybe with the newly upgraded system, the technologies might be different, the tools used might be different, the implementation is of course different. So you might want to improve on the current results that are there. So you need, let's say, to set up the base metrics, the matrix to follow, for you to say that your results are better. For you to say that if the application is performing at its best under a certain load of users. So I would say have a better plan, which has all the metrics to follow.
You said the simulation is basically based on the users, the number of users we use. So how do you come up with that number of users? Let's say maybe you have an application that is using 10 users. How do you simulate users, and you put them on 20, 200? How do you come up with numbers?
Okay, so like you said, you have an application which is using 10 users. So we will have to first start with those 10 users. You make sure that the 10 users that are there are working better. The system will perform better with those 10 users that were currently there. And then work on improving the performance when you add more stress on the system. So start with the basics, start with what you have, make sure it's working best, and then work on adding more users.
Okay, maybe after talking about the results, I know JMeter has reports. How do you generate reports? Is it a PDF report? Is it how?
Okay.
Yes.
So there's different ways of generating reports. So with JMeter, it has a lot of, I would say, how can I call it? It has reports in it. Like it has a way to help you generate those reports, which are very easily understandable by the stakeholders that you're working with. So it has a library in it which can generate reports. every time that you run, every time that you do, let's say 50 users, you want to run 50 users every second for a period of 3 seconds. It's going to show you all the requests that has failed throughout the way. It's going to show you basically necessary information that you need. So that is one way. Another way is having, I'd say, tools like New Relic, which really can also give you reports, and it's there on the internet. It gives you visuals, which I really like, visuals that help you understand how your performance is working. It does not only work for the QAs, it can also work for the developers you're working with. Since it's an activity that is done by different people, I can understand the report, the developer can understand the report, the developer who is working with the team can also understand the report. Another way is being very creative and coming up with a report on your own that you feel would help anyone. It doesn't even have to be an engineer for them to understand. So yeah, those are the three types of reports.
You talked about the developers, the DevOps engineers. So it means performance testing is not for QA only, for test engineers only.
It's a group activity. Actually.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So once the performance issues are found, what are the steps to fix the issues?
Okay, so I would say, let's say if you've tested, you have your report in red. So by red, they mean you have like the metrics that you set when you're planning are not met. So you have to share your report, of course, to the people that you're working with, and they dive deep into the specific issues that are occurring that are there in the report, and then they work on optimizing it. So once the optimizations are done by the development team or the DevOps team, you can rerun again the test, rerun again the load test to make sure that the results now are better compared to what you had before. So yeah, that's when until your metrics are met, what you've set on the while planning, that's when you can say now the performance of the system is better. Yeah, and also you have to take into consideration different factors. Let's say worldwide, if that's how I can say it, what is the average response time of a specific request or a specific endpoint? Is it between 500 milliseconds or 100? Does it take 2 seconds? Yeah, you also need to take into consideration that.
Okay, so you not only come up with your own response time, but you also have to consider
different aspects.
Okay. So how do you continuously monitor the performance testing or the performance on different endpoints to ensure scalability?
Okay, so I would say you can have the performance testing be integrated with the CI/CD, the continuous integration. So let's say every time there's a change on the whole system. So there's also that aspect of doing performance testing on the endpoints that were changed to see if they're still performing as expected. So instead of you having to, basically it's like automating the performance testing. So every time there's a new release, before it happens, the check happens during the CI/CD pipeline. So that's a better way to have it in control. It's not that it can just be done once and then it's done. So you also need to have that integrated into your continuous integrations. And have it automated.
Basically, you need to keep on checking on the health of your
platform. Health of your platform, and also you can have you can include the monitoring response where, let's say, if an endpoint is not performing very well, there's a certain way to provide alerts, like that this is not working. So before you release, just make sure this is where you stand. Your this endpoint is not working and it's supposed to.
So does it mean every time there is a deployment, let's say in production, we need to also check the performance?
Yes. But also that would depend on how the different environments that you have. You can maybe do that check before it straight goes to production. Have an environment that looks exactly like the production, where you can do all those checks, and then it's safely shipped to production.
So from your experience, how long does it take to do a performance testing, let's say on Irembo platform?
Well, I would say it would depend on how large your system is. So you might have a big system that will require you to take a lot of time. But a lot of time, I mean, it can go up to 3 months, 1 month. It depends. But also that includes all the back-to-back feedbacks that are being given, the optimizations that are being done, all those different activities. Also, testing regularly every time there's an optimization that had happened on a specific request or an endpoint. So it really depends on how big your platform is. You might even have a system that only consumes 2 endpoints, 3 endpoints, and they take you just a day. So it's subjective when it comes to that.
So as we said, microservices have really dependencies, where you find one microservice, like maybe it's an internal microservice. It depends on something else just to be able to fetch some information. So once there is an endpoint that is failing, or one microservice that is failing, how do you go about that?
So if I heard your question well, so once we have, let's say, one microservice which needs to call another one, which has an endpoint that has to call another one,
and that other one is not an internal. It's not something we have a control on. Something that is out of out of our control, and that's the part that is failing. How do you go about that?
So I would say you just make sure that things on your end are working as expected. They are running very well. You did all the optimization possible, and then wish for the best. But I would say, first make sure your calls that happens internally, as you mentioned, are working as expected. Make sure they're very much optimized, very performing at its best. And then
maybe you can engage stakeholders later.
Yes. Engage stakeholders just to for them to also have a look at their services which are not working at its best.
So what are the books you can recommend to people who want to know about this topic, about the performance testing at scale?
All right, so
books or blogs?
Well,
or YouTube or whatever.
There's a lot of resources that can help you when it comes to this activity. The internet should always be your best friend when it comes to this. There's blogs that really talk about performance testing. There's LinkedIn. People post blogs on LinkedIn. You can also check it out. There is YouTube's videos that can also assist you when it comes to that. And what else? I'll say there's also certification that you could take that will help you to really understand how performance testing works and what it is like and how you can perform it according to the system you're working on. So
So can you talk about those certifications, the YouTube, maybe the names of all the books? An example?
Well, I would say I don't have really names of YouTubes that I've watched, because I've watched a lot of videos on YouTube on how performance testing can be done. But the certifications, there's this organization, the International Software Testing Quality Assurance Board, which provides the certification around performance testing. Yeah, so that's one of the resources you could leverage on.
Okay.